Welcome everybody. It is early June 2025. I'm Daniel Foor, and I have been invited by the wonderful folks who have co-authored and pulled together this anthology to make an opening prayer and to say a few words before handing it over to them. So I'm going to really try to limit it to 10 minutes or less. So with that intent, why don't I go ahead and offer a prayer, and then we'll be in intentional space for hour 15, give or take. And thanks for being here today. Thanks for spending your time doing this. When I'm making a prayer, just notice your own connection to your people, to the earth, to goodness. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Praise to the Holy Mystery, praise to Source within me, within you, within everyone, everything. Praise to the kind and benevolent ancestors who back our lives moment to moment. Acknowledgement to the good earth here in Lathuia and Granada and Andalusia. Praise to the effort and heart and contribution of each of the folks who have made this anthology. May it reach many people. May it bring them hope, inspiration, and courage to heal what is needed. And may this time be connective and supportive. And may everyone's effort that they put into this be, be well met, like be in the form of service that uplifts their families and lives. Thanks. I mean, that's shame. So hi, welcome again. Let me start by saying that I didn't do very much for this project, that Banta and Velma and Daphne especially worked a lot with all of the authors, many of whom are here, who you'll hear from, hopefully, and all respect to them for their work and their contributions, not just the writing and editing and hustle it takes to get a book pulled together, but also the underlying work to be able to speak from as a representative of one's people. And and just to know that the book itself is an offering to the ancestors, a kind of echo back to them. We hear you, we remember you, we're listening. The lineage is not broken. And how lovely to have folks from all over the earth coming together in a way that would never have happened even a century or two ago, to be collaborating. Despite the duress we're under culturally, there's also a lot of beauty, and this is that. So thanks. It's great. I'll say from my side that besides the fact that I'm like, at the risk of being sort of awkward about it, I'm proud of you all. Like, nice work. I'm really it means a lot to me to see the lineage work flourish and take root in other places and other voices and other ways. So I feel happy about it. So thanks for your effort. Yeah. And when asked to say a thing briefly, what came to mind is, for whatever reason, is how for my own training in therapy, one of the stories about trauma is that we need a coherent narrative. That we tell our story because we're reaching toward a kind of integrated meaning of what's happened, what we've lived, in an honest way. And to have that coherent narrative takes time, it takes work, but eventually, like raw pain or trauma can become a meaningful scar, or even a tattoo with a scar around it, or wisdom, perhaps. And for sure. And what I see with the stories being woven in the book is that understanding of a coherent narrative being expanded generationally. That it's not enough to just have an individual coherent narrative. It's way better than having a fragmented narrative, but it is a whole nother task to understand oneself culturally with the earth, with big generational movements over time. And so the modeling in that is really, it's lovely. And I see it as a repair of culture also. And I've been, the thing I've been most drawn to with the ancestors lately is the Upper Paleolithic, this period from maybe 10 to 50,000 years ago, roughly. And it coincides with the quaternary megafauna extinction, which is a time where human expansion and extinctions of big animals coincide. And most theories point to some contribution, either a lot or some in an important way, of humans overhunting and humans driving those extinctions. And when I'm sitting with the much older ancestors, one of the things that they reflect back is that the patterns we're working with now, although the content might be different, the underlying pattern isn't that fundamentally different from what they were grappling with 25,000 years ago, which is just a fraction of our history. We're in such an acute moment on the planet. And yet, the wisdom to remedy it, it's not new. It just needs to be embodied and applied to our current circumstances. And so, in that way, may the generationally coherent narratives that are coming through in the stories of the anthology also be a kind of bridge for us, for more and more people to embody the instinctual relational wisdom, the earth honoring wisdom of our much older ancestors who are right here and rooting for us and holding the vision of the good outcome. With that, I just want to say thanks again for all the effort that's been made here. I want to make a lot of space for all the presenters. Thanks for your service. Let me turn it over to the three co-wrangler authors and just say appreciation for you all.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. I am Velma Love, and I want to welcome you as one of the co-editors for this volume. I'm going to read my comments in the interest of time, so forgive me for looking down. I begin with acknowledging my ancestors. I'm a descendant of enslaved Africans from Sierra Leone and Guinea-Bissau in West Africa, and Mozambique in Southern Africa, and my most recent ancestors come from South Carolina, the indigenous land of the Cherokee and the Catawba people. So this idea began as a nudging from the ancestors. It has been a journey, and it started when Daphne and I were invited by Daniel to work on a project together. I don't remember the name of the project, but we were working together. We got to know each other, and we started talking about how wonderful it would be if there were an anthology of stories, so that people who didn't know anything about this work could look at it and see what it looked like. And it seemed like a great idea, but the ancestors didn't tell us about all the work that was involved in it. It was just like, do this thing, okay. So I want to thank all of the contributors who believed in this idea, even when it seemed like it would never come to fruition. You believed in it and you hung in there. So thank you to Daniel for this initial invitation, which served as a catalyst for the work. Thank you, Daphne, for being a kind, sensitive, committed conversation partner, and for staying the course. We just hang in there together. And then when it seemed as if we couldn't do any more, they sent Banta. So thank you, Banta, for coming on board, for offering your editing and organizational skills, and for just organizing, hosting, producing this event. So I said the other day, like, you know what? The baby would never have made it. The baby would never have made it into the world if Banta had not shown up as a midwife. That was critical and crucial. So we thank you for that. So finally, this publication would not have been possible if the Woodruff Library at the Atlanta University Center had not said yes. When I just kind of on a whim sent them an inquiry about the possibility of this being an open press publication, realizing that we had gone complete circle. We had said, we didn't want to make money off the book, but then we were pursuing traditional publishers and none of it worked. And we landed in a place where we needed to be. So we're grateful to that. I think I have some ITC colleagues and some friends in the room. So thank you for being present and for your support. And before I pass the mic on, I just want to say to the gathered community, may this work inspire you to tune into the collective ancestral wisdom so desperately needed for global healing of the land at this time. Thank you, and I'll pass the mic to Daphne.
Thank you, Velma. I'm going to be short and sweet. So I echo everything you just shared, Velma, and I just appreciate your leadership and you and I just coming together and having continued conversation after continued conversation to help birth this baby. And also thank you to Banta for all your expertise in editing and helping this baby finally be born. So thank you. I just want to briefly introduce myself. I'm Daphne Fatter. My ancestors are from the UK, from Ireland, from Switzerland, from Germany and Scandinavia. I live on the unceded lands of the Comanche, Wichita, Kickapoo, and Caddo people, otherwise known as present-day Dallas, Texas, here in the United States. I'm honored to be with you all, and I'm going to pass the baton just due to time, because you'll hear about my chapter in a little bit. So, Banta, thank you again. I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Velma and Daphne, for your inspiration and for your ancestors' nudge. Appreciate that so much. And I'm Banta. My people are we're settler colonialists to North America from Scotland, Britain, Wales, Northern Europe, and the Netherlands. And I am currently living on the unceded land of the Cherokee and Salagi people outside of Asheville in the mountains of North Carolina in the United States. It was such an honor to be invited to step in and be entrusted with all of your words, all of the contributing authors' words. Thank you for trusting me with some polish and all of that. It was also, turns out, a remarkable gift to be able to do deep dives into each one of your chapters. I got to read them multiple times and just really watch them shine and shine even more brightly. And that was wonderful. And from the very beginning of this process, when we all sat down on a Zoom call with Velma and Daphne, this project has really been driven by the larger collective of all of our wise and well ancestors. And I really feel that keenly in all the words as we now offer this gift to the world in service to our ancestors and our people. And I want to say thank you again to Daniel for training all of us, for heaven's sakes. So thank you for doing that and for writing the foreword to this book. Thank you to Lauren Leonardi for your beautiful cover art, to the whole Ancestral Medicine team, just for in general support. Michael, thank you for your tech. And we offer these chapters to our ancestors in gratitude for the fact that we are even here being able to do this in the world. And I also want to add my gratitude to the Atlanta University Center's Robert Woodruff Library. The folks that I was privileged to work with there were just amazing. Lynn Davies, Christine Wiseman, thank you both so much. One of you may be on the call, I'm not sure. And we want to give each of the contributing authors an opportunity to either share about their chapter or read a little excerpt from that. So we're going to circle back around and we're going to go in the order that the chapters were written. So circling back around to Velma, whose chapter is titled Ancestral Healing and Hoodoo Wisdom, Myth, Magic, and Transformation. Velma.
Thank you, Banta. So in writing my chapter, I wanted to give voice to some of my ancestors whose spiritual technologies were demonized. And so it took me a minute. I mean, I had several false starts. I'm going to read just a brief section from the beginning, but that is the context of who the wisdom ways. So, in my sense making efforts, I landed on the Black cultural tradition of conjuring, working the crossroads, tapping into a spiritual power that has the capacity to shapeshift old narratives and provide prescriptions for healing and wholeness. The conjuring traditions recognize the unity of all life, a universe including the living, the dead, and the yet to be born in a web of connectivity and an entanglement of source energy, malleable to the will and way of the adept in spiritual and ideological technologies. The spiritual adepts are the ones who live close to nature, commune with the elements, and hold a healthy respect for all of creation. They are fundi, experts in understanding the nature of spirit, accomplished at orchestrating healing energies through sacred herbalism, rhythm, sound, story, prayer, preaching, movement, and song. This is what I call hoodoo wisdom ways. It occurred to me that it is the hoodoo wisdom way that ancestral lineage healing practitioners engage to alchemize, transmute, and transform generational troubles. Like the map of a buried treasure, this insight revealed itself to me slowly through my experience as an ancestral lineage healing practitioner. You got to read it to get the rest of it. I'll pass the mic on to the next person.
Daphne, that would be you. And your chapter is called Drink the Ashes of the Dead, Whiteness, Atonement, Interdependence, and Responsibility.
Thank you. So first, I just want to acknowledge my practitioner, Michelle, who's also a fellow co-author that's here on the call today. So thank you for helping me in my own healing around this. So I'm tearful. So I'm going to read just a snippet from the beginning of my chapter and then at the end, because this is also an ongoing process, particularly with this lineage. So after I first felt it quaking in my body. After Queen Elizabeth's death in 2022, my body remembered something that I had not known before. Without words, my body began to reveal the journey of my British ancestors, many of whom were unwell in spirit. This showed up in my body as a frozen dread and a reflexive bracing in my midsection. I would soon learn that these physical expressions were fragments of the lived experience of my British lineage, particularly those in male bodies. So I just want to name this process of repair with this lineage who participated in a lot of harm, particularly being part of the British Army, and took well over a year. Really was a somatic process for me. There was a parallel process in my body. And I'll read towards the end, my continued healing includes befriending the wolf in my lineage. The power over energy of whiteness can move through the wolf and take over my body. Befriending the wolf energy that has historically been used to enact harm is the next step for my continued healing. My current task, my present day medicine, is to drink the ashes of the dead, to not disconnect and disembody, to resist the temptation to move with urgency, to not get caught in the delusion that I am separate from my ancestors and from all other beings, including human, plant, animal, and those in the unseen world. So thank you. You'll have to read the chapter to learn about my journey. Thank you.
Thanks, Daphne. Up next would be Orson Morrison. Your chapter is called Reclaiming Ubuntu, Ancestral Relationships and the Medicine of Radical Belonging. Orson. Do you have to unmute yourself, Orson?
I have to unmute him and I'm
Sorry.
struggling to find him. I'm sorry.
I know he's here.
Hi,
I got you,
everybody.
Michael.
Yeah, deepest gratitude to Daphne, Velma, and Banta, as well as Daniel, for inspiring this work. My people hail from Southern African indigenous populations, peoples brought as indentured workers to the South African Cape from South Asia and the Indonesian archipelago. Central Africans, West African peoples brought to the Caribbean via the transatlantic slave trade, indigenous populations from Guyana, European settlers, and Huguenots who fled religious persecution. And so really my chapter is about sort of this multiracial ancestry that I carry, and how I have found ways to really heal, reconcile, forgive, integrate, weave all of those beautiful lineages together in a way that brings healing, brings purpose to my life. I start by just sharing the story of growing up as a child, listening to my late grandfather August Adrian's speak these sort of trauma narratives. He and my grandmother Elizabeth Mouton were an interracial couple in apartheid era South Africa, and during apartheid, their home was taken under the Group Areas Act. It was reclassified as a white-only area. And so I grew up hearing these trauma narratives over and over and over again. And just, in retrospect, those narratives were kind of a portal, an invitation from my ancestors to really find ways to rewrite this narrative and rewrite this story. I also talk about other ancestors and elders like Bishop Desmond Tutu, who introduced me to this concept of Ubuntu, this idea that we cannot be fully human without each other. And that philosophy really has been central in doing this sort of multiracial, multi-ethnic healing work on my lineages. I also speak about the beautiful technologies of ancestral lineage healing, particularly around doing this multiracial healing work, frameworks to provide my lineages opportunities to interact with one another, to dialogue with one another, to tell the story of what their experiences were with one another, bring understanding, forgiveness, reconciliation. I also share a poem that I was inspired to write when I went back to the land where my ancestors' home once stood, and was really inspired by just being in that really sacred space. So please read the chapter. Lots more there, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Arson. And just a word about all of these chapters. All of these are personal stories, either from the authors or from their ancestors. So I really encourage engagement with that. The next chapter is Michelle and Tessenson, Walking Proudly with Almond Eyes. Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I'm in Singapore in Southeast Asia, and I'd like to start by thanking Daphne and Velma for inviting me to be a part of this project. I was really honored, and it came at really the perfect time. Also to Daniel and Lauren and everybody involved in this project, Banta as well for the editing, and the Woodruff Library of Atlanta University Center for publishing us. So my chapter is about reclaiming my Asian lineages. I'm a Singapore Eurasian. So I'm descendant from Europeans and Asians who intermarried over the last 500 years. Many of my ancestors worked in the colonial administration or trading companies like the Dutch East India Company. So I talk about finding pride, healthy pride, cultural pride in my Asian lineages and that process of healing to get there. Because Singapore Eurasians often minimized or played down or even denied their Asian lineages until very recently. So I'd like to read a little excerpt from my chapter. It's called Walking Proudly with Almond Eyes. I grew up wishing my eyes were bigger and hated that they got even smaller when I cried, which I did a lot, being the sensitive child that I was. I didn't look like I was supposed to, even though I had my father's eyes. He had his mother's eyes, and she her father's, who had his grandmother, Bellamina Cashin's eyes. Bellamina was of Chinese descent, born in Malacca and adopted by a Maltese family in Singapore. My nephew shares this feature with us. When he was young, there were sotto voce remarks about his Chinese eyes that were distinct from his siblings, as if we were embarrassed on his behalf. It's not as if we hide our Asian ancestry. We are proud to be Eurasian, but there is definitely a sense that it's the European part that we are prouder of. A hangover, no doubt, from the colonial days when being and looking white would afford you greater status and opportunities, therefore more wealth and security. So my chapter is about moving through that feeling that my eyes needed to be different and coming to walk proudly with almond eyes.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to veer off course briefly because one of our authors is not able to stay for the whole call. So Allison Lanier's chapter is called The Thirst for Wholeness Beyond Repair, Healing Across Dimensions. Allison.
Hi, thanks, Banta. Thank you, everyone, for letting me jump line here. I'm between client calls, so I got to run. But just wanted to give gratitude to Velma, Daphne, Daniel, all of our ancestors, and to acknowledge all of the time, all of the energy that went into place simply to form our willingness and ability to be present, to show up for a practitioner training, to show up for a retreat, to meet Daniel, to be open to this kind of work, and to then be willing to yield to it, to let it work us. So the intention of my chapter is to invite readers into the kind of sessions I do so they can glimpse what's possible in integrative healing, and to invite practitioners of all kinds to stop being siloed in their perspective and their approach, to stop choosing between therapy and spirit. I wanted to speak to, in this chapter, I wanted to speak to what I've found in my work with folks beyond, or with both their inherited and lived trauma. People that I tend to come to me are people that have an affinity for therapy. They don't want to let go of the therapy necessarily, but they also are kind of tired of it, and they want to engage in the lineage work or the spiritual work. And inevitably, in doing lineage healing with people, in my work with them, I have found that there comes a time when things slow down, and there needs to be work with their own psyche, their own spirit, their own energy body, their own emotional body, based on what they've lived through or into intergenerationally or in their life. So essentially, the work that I've been up to is, for my over 30 years of my work, is wholeness, exploring what it means to heal across the various layers and dimensions of one's being in service of their wholeness. In my opinion, true wholeness integrates every aspect of your being. And when we allow this, it changes everything. So I gave grace to trusting that everyone else's chapter was going to be what it was going to be on behalf of the work itself. So what I wanted was to invite readers in to be a fly on the wall in a session of the kind of integrative work that's possible with the ancestors. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Allison. Appreciate you being able to join. Thank you. The next chapter is Kimiko's chapter, Ancestral Healing and Adoptees.
Thank you, Banta. Thank you for all your work. Velma, Daphne, for your vision. Daniel, for your support. Ancestral Medicine, for your support. My name is Kimiko. I was born in Hilo, Hawaii, adopted when I was 2 weeks old. DNA tests say that I'm 90% Japanese and 10% Filipino. So my chapter is all about my exploration with how ancestors and adoptees work together, and what it means to be adopted and have ancestors. So I'm just going to read from my chapter a bit about how I got started in this work. I always knew I would search for my birth parents. After more than 20 years of searching for them in my adulthood, I started to confront the reality that I might never meet them. I was out of my mind. I didn't know how to prepare myself for the end of a dream I had my entire life. To cope, I took a course on grounding and energy healing with an organization called Intuitive Mind. In these classes, they mentioned our ancestors and how important they are. The word ancestor sent chills down my spine. I didn't know if I had any ancestors because I was adopted. Did my biological ancestors know I existed? Did my adopted ancestors consider me part of their family? This was not the first time I had these questions. Growing up, my family celebrated Obon, an annual Japanese holiday when people celebrate and honor their ancestors. Both sides of my family were Christian, so we did not learn about the Buddhist traditions behind Obon. In my childhood, the ancestors were a noun, and I was not in a mental place to process what that meant. Confronted with the concept of ancestors once again, I discovered a new area of adoptee unknowns, the realm of the ancestors and how I might relate to them. Like many adoptees, I was exhausted from contending with all the unknowns in my life. To now face yet another unknown felt devastating and overwhelming. Having to deal with the familiar feelings of not belonging and not knowing who to turn to made me annoyed and angry. But as I watched my non-adopted classmates have blissed out experiences with their ancestors, my curiosity grew. The ancestral world seemed so alive and tangible to them. I wondered if I could find grounding and rootedness in the ancestors too. Questions flooded my mind. How would I identify my blood ancestors if I had never met anyone from my living family? How could I be sure of connecting to the correct group of people? Does only DNA count for ancestry? Since I don't share their DNA, do my adoptive ancestors even know who I am? How do they see my role in the family? Will it be easier to connect with these adoptive ancestors because I know people from the line? Would they even want to connect with me? How do adoptees fit into the world of the ancestors? While taking these classes, I was secondarily rejected by both birth parents. I had to confront the fact that the biggest desire in my life, the thing that took up the most space in my brain, will never come true. So I became obsessed with connecting to my ancestors because they would likely be the only birth family I would ever meet. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kimiko. Our next author is Alex, who wrote a chapter entitled Outsider Wisdom, Ancestral Healing with Immigrants.
Thanks, Banta, and thank you all. And I'm situated here in a small island just off the coast of Greece today, surrounded by lots of olive trees and pistachio trees. And I feel I want to extend my gratitude to the olives and the land around me for also whispering bits of wisdom that formed part of the chapter and formed part of my journey too. So I'll say some information on the chapter and the journey that's included. And I grew up in Greece, but I experienced a lot of movement, both in my early life and also in my later life as an adult. And the land where I lived also has rich stories about immigration. And in most recent years, we've also experienced big waves of refugee crisis, and also being on the receiving end of extractive capitalist tourism that is felt throughout. And I was wondering through my own journey with moving to different land and then returning and moving again, and just this journey of mobility that's so common in our modern world, and was wondering about how mobility, how immigration is portrayed, and so that there's often two ways. One of either the flight to growth, development, seeking better opportunities, And on the other side, there's a sense of like retreating from unbearable situations where it's often a matter of survival. And just because I'm not a huge fan of binaries, I was wondering if there can be another way of wandering around immigration. And was wondering if we can move away from stories of victory or supremacy, or stories of defeat um, and survival. Like, what kind of stories might call us? And my sense was that stories of redemption and sanctuary were stories that might emerge at a different space. And 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 hence I try to approach immigration through an ancestral healing lens, through that understanding that how can we redeem immigration in some way. And having experienced being an immigrant at another place, but even if you haven't, and you somehow have the ancestral experience of migration, I know that for myself speaking, no matter how well integrated as a person living in a different culture from the one that you grew up can be, at a deeper, like, existential level, you cannot, most will carry a sense of outsiderness. And I wondered how could we redeem that sense of outsiderness that at a deeper level maybe all humans carry, and maybe immigrants might feel it in a more prevalent way. And hence I wondered about the ways that the land and the ancestors, and in my experience, I felt and received the ancestors as the connective tissue between my body and the body of the land, the body of the earth. And my sense was that through tuning in deeper with the ancestors and further than that, the land, that there's that source of consolation and sanctuary that can generate a third space between those binaries. So that's the short summary, and more in the chapter. Thank you all.
Thank you, Alex. That chapter is Ila's chapter, Waking Up with My Ancestors, Returning to Earth-Based Jewish Practice and Trusting in Divine Mystery. Ela.
Hey, thank you all so much. I feel like, yeah, there's something very beautiful and mysterious about pouring a lot of love and energy into something and then just handing it off. And it feels like it just sort of emerged in this very, yeah, profound way. So I'm grateful to y'all for being here and for everyone who put so much love and care into this project. And my prayer is that our chapters can support people in whatever way they're needing to receive that. So I'm going to read just a bit of the very beginning of my chapter, which shares the story of me navigating my experience as a Jew and reconnecting with Jewish tradition, and also exploring Zen Buddhism and some unexpected, unwanted contact with a recent ancestor of mine, and navigating the complexity that brought up. My sensitivity to the living world has been awake for as long as I can remember. When I was young, I knew everything to be alive. The world was thrumming with life, and I sought this out wherever I could find it. I sought out the trees and the stones, the soil and sky, the small creatures. I lived in imaginal spaces, in magical realms where a spark of possibility beyond the ordinary resided. An eagerness to connect moved through me, and in the animate, more than human world, that connection was most vividly available. I was raised in a middle-class Ashkenazi Jewish home in the suburbs of New Jersey in the US. My earliest memory of Jewish ritual is my mother lighting Shabbat candles. Every Friday night, we witnessed her place 2 tapers in a candle holder, light the flames, and cover her eyes to recite the blessing. It was a rare moment of sanctified quiet and intentional space. I remember days overcome by the ache of loneliness in isolated school chairs under bright fluorescence, the stress of pressure to achieve perfectly and attempt to fit in a predominantly white Gentile world. I remember striving to become something alien to my own nature, to meet the standards set by my teachers and peers. And I remember on Friday evenings, a brief portal into another reality. Taking in the spirit of the fire, we allow the flame to transform the mundane, stress-filled week into the sacred space of Shabbat. This time of kavanah, of intention, carved out in my mind another possibility. Here I could feel a different world, and something in me hungered for it. As we grew older, this visible tether to my mother's more observant Jewish upbringing slipped away into the overwhelming pressures of contemporary US life and capitalism. She stopped lighting candles, and this rare space was swallowed. As for so many European heritage Jews, it seemed safer to my family to blend in, to become white, and in this way hope to escape the risk of violence, rather than allying ourselves with other oppressed peoples, as many Jews also do and have done. In Jewish communities throughout the US and elsewhere, people chose or were forced to change their names, speak English rather than Yiddish or other Jewish cultural languages, strive for academic and professional success, blend in. In other words, to become American. And so I'm just going to skip ahead, and I just want to read a few questions these are the questions that were animating me in that time around being Jewish. Why bother maintaining the Jewish elements? Why recite prayers in a language none of us, save my grandfather, understood a word of, to a God almost none of us believed in? Where did my life fit into this ancient body of teachings and practices? Was there some deeper dimension hidden in Judaism to ease the ache of my heart, provide a path of sacred practice, and remind me of our vibrant connection with all of life? And to, as others said, to know the answer to that, you'll have to read the chapter. Thank you all so much.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Next up would be Lita. Your chapter is titled Soul Return, Lineage Repair and Discovering One's Destiny.
Thank you so much to each and every single one of you. To Velma, who literally inspired me to keep writing and pushed me in more ways than I've ever been pushed. To Daphne, who reminded me to constantly submit on time. Man, I got so many emails from her. And Bantu came on board to remind me of this incredible session. Like, it's just an incredible team of individuals that are passionate about making this happen. So it's important to acknowledge you and acknowledge your ancestors for the work that you've done behind the scenes to make this happen. Deep gratitude, of course, Daniel, for just this entire space. But beyond that, I want to just give deep gratitude to all of the authors. You know, I know the depth of vulnerability it takes to share, because we all go through these incredible experiences with our ancestors. But to put it out there takes a lot of courage, and so I just want to honor the courage that each and every single one of the authors has taken to share this, to create this magical work. Just to tell you a little bit about my kind of story, it's been such a wonderful experience. I mean, over the years, ups and downs, obviously, but the essence of it all has been a deep conversation, a deep conversation with my ancestors in a state of confusion. And for the longest period of time, I've just been asking questions about what is the purpose of life and why are we here and what is the point of it all, you know? And so it's just been wonderful that the ancestors came through, specifically one in my lineage called Umdoti, who speaks to me quite a lot and tells me a lot of the stories in the lineage around, you know, your destiny. And of course, in my sharing, it's like many years of ancestral journeys. I mean, if you had to see the number of journals I have, it's just insane. So it's wonderful to just take all of that and put it into a chapter.
So I wanted to share with you a little bit about, just from my reading. So to start off by saying, my grandmother once told me that before any soul incarnates into the world, there's a moment where the ancestors convene to review what is happening in their lineages. They come together as a council of elders and speak about what is needed for this time. They look into the traumas that many generations have gone through and notice which traumas continue to work through the family lineages again and again. And for me, that's always been a very powerful kind of notion, the idea that we are here to fix that which is broken. We are here to create a new narrative of some sort, and truly understanding that when you work with your ancestors, you're so resourced. And for me, it's just been so great to meet so many different ancestors and experience the many different gifts. And I share a lot of that within my writing. So yeah, if you want to know more, just read all about it. But it's in essence, what is destiny and what does it mean to walk a line with your ancestors, where you reshape your lineage and you reshape your life, and wherever it is that you're called to do the work, yeah. But thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity, and blessings to you all. May you thoroughly enjoy reading this wonderful anthology. Blessings.
Thank you so much, Lita. Next is Simon Wolf with a beautiful poem called Body Roots.
Thank you, Banta. Hi, everyone. I'm Simon, or Shimon. Grateful to be here and to be a part of this project. Thank you so much, Velma and Daphne and Banta, and Daniel, and everybody who has contributed. My ancestors are primarily Ashkenazi Jews from Lithuania and surrounding areas. And full transparency is I wrote a chapter that I ended up composting, and instead I ended up sharing this poem that actually came through when I first started doing sessions with my practitioner and mentor, Taya Shear, who some of you probably know. And coming into contact with Taya and her work and my ancestors was really the beginning of coming back into connection with Judaism in a way that felt healing and transformative for me, having distanced myself for reasons that are so common, especially in my generation, kind of distancing myself from the patriarchal lineages that I had grown up in. And so the poem that I chose to share is really about reconnecting with earth-based, body-based ritual, which is some of what immediately started coming through when I connected to my more ancient ancestors. And it's like this pre-rabbinical, more animist way of living and relating that I didn't know I had in my lineages, and which is why also as a previously kind of lost white Jew in this country, in the US, Turtle Island, I had been attracted to yoga and other earth-based traditions that were feeding this hunger that I didn't really know where it was coming from. And so it's been really powerful to realize, oh, I too have earth-based ancestors, which is such a powerful aspect of this work. So I'm just going to read a snippet from the end of the poem. It's a bit of a spoiler alert, but you can read the whole poem and experience the whole trajectory and get a sense for some of how this work has been transformative for me, and experiencing the divine feminine, which in Judaism we call Shekinah, which is the divine feminine who dwells within our own heart. So this is just an excerpt from the end, and it reads, "Receive her moonlight on the path home to the motherland of your body. Receive her wildness, her spells, magic incantations, her potions, tinctures, the salve of her caress, medicine to knit you back into your holy lineage. It needs you. You are not insignificant to these generations behind you. They are calling you back to prayer, inviting you to attune to what was and what wants to become. Invitation to shape. A welcome to full body experience of aliveness. Invitation to dwell in this body. Reclaim this body. Thank this sacred body. This presence, this container for the pleasure of presence, divine vessel, inhabit this temple, dance in the grace of its knowing. This here, body, welcome, this, home, here, body, roots." Thanks so much.
Thank you, Simon. Next up is Erica, From Today to My Ancestors.
I'm not so sure Erica's here today.
Oh, I thought I saw her name on the list. Okay.
I haven't noticed her either. Yeah.
Erica, if you're here and you can get on, then we welcome you. Otherwise, please read this chapter in the book. Yes. So mine is next, so I'll go. My chapter is Intuitive Knowing, a Conduit to Ancestral Connection. And I will say that at the heart of my own journey was the recovery of intuitive knowing. I think many of us on this call would agree that the most frequently asked questions by people who are trying to connect with their ancestors for the first time are, am I making this up? Is this just my imagination? Am I doing it right? And I believe that each of these questions reflects our collective cultural mistrust of intuitive knowing and the self-doubt that is central to that. In my own ancestral healing journey, I wrestled long and hard with the part of myself that I called the doubt whisperer. She was determined to overthink the process, determined to believe that there must be a right way to do this. But only when I surrendered finally to my own intuitive wisdom was I able to connect at the heart with an ancient grandmother guide. Beyond each individual's recovery of trust in intuitive knowing lies the possibility of significant cultural healing. And in the chapter, I imagine a culture that welcomes traditions that are steeped in intuitive wisdom. Wisdom that includes earth and land honoring practices, wisdom that is centered in the heart. My chapter also addresses the way that ancestral lineage healing has been for many of my clients the missing piece in often years-long personal growth journey. As a career psychotherapist, I surely had countless clients who worked through all of their own lived trauma and yet still had a cloud of heaviness following them around, a cloud that didn't belong to them. Some of them may have known or suspected that this cloud represented the multi-generational trauma of their ancestors that even the best psychotherapy modalities could not access. But ancestral lineage healing offered them a way in, a means of engaging with ancient ancestral guides to set in motion a transformational lineage repair process. And several of those clients speak in my chapter to what that meant for them. I would say beyond that, this chapter is a bit of a primer for dropping in, for getting out of the head and into the heart. And for that, I give deep gratitude to my own ancestors for nudging me along and insisting that I get there. Thank you. I'm going to pass this to Catherine, who wrote about the healing power of relating directly with the ancestors.
Hello, all. Thank you, Banta. I just want to start by saying I'm noticing how just moved I am being here today and this coming to fruition and the number of people here in this community. It just, yeah. I'm deeply grateful that my ancestors brought me here and here with companions such as Velma and Daphne and Banta, like warriors of the heart with a cause who just would never be defeated. So for your tenacity that enabled the rest of us to stay with it, thank you. And to you, Daniel, because none of us would have found each other without you and the structure of the work. So yeah, deep gratitude. I'm Catherine. I'm coming to you from Ceanmara, County Kerry in Southwest Ireland, Kenmare, County Kerry. All of my people hail from Munster, which is the southwest province of Ireland. But it's not where I was born. I was born on unceded Lenape lands referred to today as Queens, New York, to two Irish immigrant parents, one of whom is here on the call, my beloved mama and greatest cheerleader. So another blessing to have another generation of my lineage here to be able to speak to this. So hi, Mom. My chapter is about the healing power of relationship, which has really sat at the center of my life's work. I, to use Banta's phrase, have been a career psychotherapist. I like it. I'm adopting it. Thank you, Banta, for about 35 years. And I know I share that with many others here. And my journey brought me to ancestral lineage healing, and it just feels like the most natural fruition or next step. And I came to a place now where it feels like trying to do, as Banta spoke to, deep, ongoing psychotherapeutic work without our ancestors feels kind of paramount to flying with one wing, or trying to. And so I sort of tried to start to speak to that weave from psychotherapy to the ancestors. Um, and I include, so I'm going to just name a couple of short excerpts from the chapter so you get a sense. One of the quotes I used was from the divine Bell Hooks, Maybe She Be So Well in Spirit, where she says, "Only love can heal the wounds of the past. However, the intensity of our woundedness often leads to a closing of the heart, making it impossible for us to give or receive the love that is given to us." And I would add, and is so needed for that healing process. So Carl Rogers tried to, he would succinctly say there are three things needed: empathy, congruence, and unconditional positive regard. And when they're present, that sort of innate healing process can be ignited. And for me, hard and all as I have worked, and beautiful and all is the work I have experienced and shared with clients and trainees and supervisees, that's very aspirational for our beloved human beings, sometimes. So I try to speak to how well positioned the ancestors are for bringing these conditions. So I'll just read you this last bit. Since I began doing this ancestral lineage healing work myself, and subsequently facilitating others to come into more direct connection with their ancestors, I have been struck time and again by how well positioned and equipped our wise, well, and loving ancestors are to offer effortlessly the core conditions of which Roger spoke. Our wise and well ancestors operate from a vibrant collective consciousness. They are waiting for us to turn toward them so they can relate with us in a deeply healing and nourishing way. Quite simply, they love us. From that place of exceptional, deep love, empathy, congruence, and unconditional positive regard flow in abundance. Once I directly engage with my ancestors with the ritual safety and support that this model of ancestral lineage healing helps to create, there were exponential changes to my personal sense of belonging and my ability to receive support. Over time, I began to realize that it just wasn't all up to me to heal or fix. I also began to experience more space, hope, and movement around some of the core wounds and challenges I had been working with for decades in my own life. And so, while that's a very personal story, I think it has huge ramifications when we take that to the next level. For those of us that can access this level of love, quite simply, we can connect with ourselves, with our ancestors, and with the world beyond in a way that I truly believe is, at least in one corner, revolutionary. And so I hope the chapter is helpful. I'm grateful to be part of it. Thanks, Mom. And yeah, and thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I love that your mom is here. Hi, Mom. It's great. And our last author is Jessica, whose chapter is entitled Blessings of Belonging, Lessons on Sacred Difference and Connections with the Natural World. Jessica.
Hey all. So grateful to be here with you today, feeling more humbled and honored than ever just hearing from each of you this morning. So feeling very, very tender in this moment. And yeah, just really, really blessed to have a chapter alongside of all of you. Jessica Headley Turnus, I'm logging on from Southern California, lands of the Tongva people and home to the Matahia poppy and the now extinct California grizzly. My people hail from countries across Northwestern Europe. And when I dropped in with my ancestors around the focus for the chapter, I had no idea what I was going to write about. They just gave a firm answer of yes. And they kept coming back to and emphasizing the daily work and lessons that they do with me, and the tangible apprenticing that I do with them, and specifically the connections that they lean on to the flora and fauna kingdom in the work that they do with me. Having been raised in Joshua Tree, I talk about this in my chapter, but alongside a very loving human family and multi-generational household in so many ways, I felt equally mothered by quail and fathered by roadrunner, and learned my first lesson on embodiment from creosote. So much of the work they do with me and teach me is rooted in those connections, from the camphor tree in our backyard, whose roots hold our home and resource our family, to the dove parents in our front succulent who've been bringing dove babies into our lives for half a decade now, who've taught me more about vulnerability than anyone in this lifetime. They just continue to partner with them and teach me lessons and bring forward wisdom in ways with the flora and fauna kingdom that really help me show up in more generative ways for this time and place. And yeah, learning from all of them together is such a staple of who I am now. And just so grateful to Daniel for the foundational support and the structure. For Banta, Velma, Daphne, thank you so much. You all did so much work. And to all the other contributing authors here, it's just a complete honor. Yeah, thank you all.
Thanks so much, Jessica. Yeah, just another shout out to all of the authors. It's amazing that so many of us were able to be here today, given global time zones. So thank you to everyone. Also, a shout out to Shannon Willis, who is the ritualist guru at Ancestral Medicine, for helping us all become better ritualists, which is pretty darned important in this work that we do. So thank you, Shannon. We have some time for questions, reflections, comments. Just give us a minute to find you, but feel welcome to, I think Michael is going to help you unmute. Anybody who wants to speak to anything they've heard or questions that they want to ask. Paula has a hand up. There you are, Paula.
Oops, sorry. Hold on. Yeah, it would be great to hear you guys talk about the process of what you dealt with in writing this, your pieces. I'm sure it wasn't like just a smooth, easy journey. It'd be great to just hear about, some of the the journey you took to get to where you got to.
Well, I'd love to hear from any of the authors about that. I would venture to guess that many of us would say that we didn't write the chapters. The ancestors wrote the chapters. But yeah, I'd like to hear more about that.
I can share. I think I want to also name all the practitioners that I worked with. I contacted almost everybody and worked with almost everybody on the training that I did. And most of the authors here did the training together in the cohort I call the COVID cohort. So yeah, it was a lot of work to get all that information, but also a lot of work in addition to help with the editing. So lots of beta readers, lots of friends editing. That's before even Banter looked at it. And it was a lot of time in between as well, of just staying in touch, staying connected. And at the end, really just releasing it and thinking, okay, we're not going to get published. And then suddenly we were. So it was a journey we took together, I feel, over 3 years, from the very first email from Daphne asking me if I wanted to be involved in this process. A lot of faith, a lot of trust, a lot of effort, a lot of connectivity, and a lot of people. Truly a group team effort, and our ancestors including.
I will just add that, for me, I spent a lot of time just dropping in with my ancestors way before the writing part. So, months and months, just dropping in, just having dialogues with the ancestors. What do you want to say? And then the writing came. So I think just spending a lot of time with the ancestors first.
And I can add too that it was such a deeply personal, emotional story for me to write that it was difficult for me to try to stay neutral about everything. So I really relied on the ancestors to kind of smooth things out and not let things get too emotional and wild.
Pam has a question.
Hi, everyone. I'm relatively new to ancestral medicine. It's been, we're just finishing up the lineage healing course later today. But it's been a very rich and enlivening experience. And this book is also part of that experience. It's so fascinating to hear individual stories. And I wanted to give a special shout out to Kimiko because my husband, who is Japanese, is currently writing a book, a fictionalized book based on his family story. And one of the characters, and this is, based on a mystery that's in his family, was adopted out. And she's like the central character of his book, but he had no background or he never knew anyone who was adopted. He had no emotional, social background. And so when I found your chapter, I sent it to him, and you'll be happy to know, I hope, that your expression of your emotions and the tenderness and sensitivity around exploring your ancestors and just the longing for family is something that he didn't really understand until he read your chapter. So thank you again.
God, thank you so much. That means so much. You have no idea. Thanks.
Thank you. Stephen Lewis. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Congratulations on your gift to the world. So here's my question for the editors. What do you know now, reading over all these chapters, poring over the content? What do you know now about ancestors and particularly healing that a larger culture may or may not, be tuned in or dial in at this point?
So let me respond to my son-in-law there. He's been part of this journey. We were together when we first met Daniel and found out about ancestral medicine, and so we've been conversational partners for a few years now on this work. Oh my, just listening to all of the sharings today and the preliminary reading that I did, I became acutely aware of the collective wisdom resource that's available to us that I never thought about it. I mean, I just never thought about it as a resource for cultural healing and cultural change and all of the things that we as change makers want to do. There's this invisible realm of power and energy. And so I am grateful for that, that knowing, that insight, and that recognition. And thank you, Daniel, again for orchestrating this whole thing so that we were all able to get to that point.
Good to see you here, Stephen. I'll say a thing as well briefly, not because I wrote more than the foreword for this book, but because I wrote another book on ancestral healing, and they've been saying to me for years, the ancestors, like, you only understand like a fraction of what you're doing here. I'm like, I know. And so one of the things I didn't know, and I know a little more, I'm not sure the other things I don't know, is how key it is to transform and compost the extreme individualism that we so easily pick up as a kind of conditioning, and just how contrary it is to the necessary solidarity and cooperation that we need to shift harmful systems, and how connecting with the ancestors is a sneaky and effective way to subvert and interrupt the extreme individualism, because we start to get a sense of identity that's more generational and that's more entangled, and it's more like full of ancestral debts and blessings and pulls that are not just from our lifetime. That feels more honest, and it feels like it allows the earth and the land to trust us instinctually a little more when we're moving in that way. But it also leads to better change work for harmful systems. And I didn't understand all that at first. I was just like, cool. I thought my family was the most boring thing in the universe, and they're actually just like a front for, like, bless them, for really amazing, interesting, earth-connected, witchy, fun European things that I never got taught about. So that was an interesting hook. But then as I've stayed with it, I'm like, oh, this is actually really important to get things turned around. Cool. So yeah, that's what I would add. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Daniel. And I want to honor everyone's time here and just say again how appreciative we all are to be here together and to be offering this gift into the world. And Daphne, Velma, you all have any things you want to say?
No, thank you, everyone. Yeah, take care. Lean into your people. Yeah, we're in this together.
just a note about the link to the book. It is free to the public, free to you. It is somewhere in the chat. It's also available. You can find it on the Ancestral Medicine website in the section referred to Daniel's book. If you scroll all the way down that page beyond Daniel's photograph, you'll find the link to our book as well. So, yeah. Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you, Banta, for your work facilitating and hosting. We appreciate you.
Pleasure.